Australia is home to some of the most diverse ocean and coral reef ecosystems in the world. Our coast supports the largest single reef system on the planet and provides refuge for 6 of the 7 known marine turtle species, 45 whale and dolphin species, and 4,000 fish species, 20% of the global total. Our environment, economy, society and culture are deeply dependent on the health of these marine habitats. Therefore, the long-term management of these resources are a high priority for stakeholders, such as local and national tourism and commercial fishing schemes. However, our oceans, like many global, have suffered from the industrial and urban impacts of our developing planet. Threats such as coastal development, overfishing, offshore petroleum extraction and production, invasive marine pests and climate change are all contributing to the rapid degradation of Australian and global marine ecosystems.
Zoning is a method implemented by marine protection agencies domestically and internationally. Australia implements 5 types of marine protection zones, which protect more than 33% of the Australian waters. The first is the Marine National Park Zones. Marine National Park Zones afford the greatest level of protection. They are identified on the zoning map as green. Green zones are essentially look but don't take zones, in which activities such as fishing and collecting are prohibited. No-take activities such as diving and photography are allowed. Next comes the buffer zone. The buffer zones have the same entry and use provisions as marine national park zones, but differ in that trolling for pelagic species is permitted. Buffer zones are identified on the zoning map as olive green, but only one buffer zone exists in the Great Sandy Marine Park, and this is around the Marine National Park Zone at Wolf Rock. Next comes the Conservation Park Zone. Conservation Park zones, identified on the zoning map as yellow, protect significant marine habitats. Commercial netting, trolling, and fishing and harvest fishing are all prohibited in these zones. Restrictions apply to most other activities conducted in this zone. Line fishing is limited to 1 line or rod and 1 hook or lure per person. When trolling, a maximum of 3 lines or rods with a combined total of 6 hooks can be used per person. When crabbing is permitted, only 4 catch devices may be used per person. Conservation park zones aim to provide a high level of protection for marine landscapes. Within the Great Sandy designated area, some provisions regarding commercial and recreational fishing are different from those in the rest of the Conservation Park Zone. Next is the Habitat Protection Zone. Habitat protection zones are identified in the zoning map as dark blue. They are located over areas that contain sensitive habitats. Most activities are permitted in the habitat protection zones, but trolling is prohibited. Finally, the general use zones. The light blue or general use zones aim to provide for conservation while providing opportunities for reasonable use. Most activities are permitted in the zone, but some require a permit. Zones are most effective when it comes to maintaining the health of the reef. Although damage to marine parks still occur, such as natural disasters and invasive species, zoning is successful in decreasing overfishing, reducing essential habitat destruction, and benefits tourism. There are positives and negatives of marine park zones. Some of the positives include reef systems provide refuge and resource for juvenile and reef-dwelling fish. Therefore, zoning important areas allows for the rehabilitation and protection of areas important to species-specific life stages, such as reproductive areas and nursing grounds for species such as damsel. Species such as parrotfish are also dependent on coral reef ecosystems for feeding and spawning grounds. Healthy coral also supports tourism within marine parks via educational tours along segmented reef systems. Coral ecosystems also have a key cultural significance to the areas along the east coast of Australia, with native tribes using offshore reef systems to gather and collect food prior to white settlement. No-take marine parks can also play an integral role in protecting coral core fish stocks, which in turn benefit fisheries through enhancing the size and abundance of target species. This is referred to as the spillover effect and has been particularly successful for recreational fishing on the Great Barrier Reef. There are also many major marine park disadvantages. Marine parks have little to no enforcement due to their location. If you've ever been to any small fishing villages along the east coast of Australia, you'd know water police and monitoring are rarely available due to location and resources, leaving tourists and recreational fishermen to take what they like without being caught. This alone is a massive issue, along with no proper education for the public on the catch limits for specific fish and sizing limits. For example, a very popular schooling species is the Spanish mackerel. Spanish mackerel is the second most common fish species sold in Queensland, with up to 600 tons being commercially farmed in 2002 within Queensland waters, over 70% being sourced from waters north of Bowen. Generally dwelling on rocky shoals and coral reefs, it is not hard to see why there is generally a thriving population living in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park. The current catch limit on these fish across Australia recreationally is, without a permit, 3 per person with the length of 75 centimeters with a max up to 240 centimeters and 70 kilograms. Fisheries around Australia can sell each one of these fish from between $20 to $40 per kilo. Due to the high demand for this species, illegal catch is a major problem affecting fisheries and thus damaging the fragile ecological niche and food web many species need to survive.